and really very helpful. So I always start with data, but I'm going to skip this slide today with just a couple comments that if you're feeling it in your district, you're not alone. We are seeing chronic absence rates increase in November and December due to many different things. My next slide will get into that. If you go to the next slide for me. So these are some, we had a discussion with attendance and leads and our LEAP coordinators about what they're seeing in their districts in the beginning of December, as far as why are students missing school? Why are we not seeing an improvement? And so some of the elements are here, you know, the triple respiratory threat, which we feel right now COVID is ramping up. People are following an abundance of caution with illness. There's a lot of medical appointments. And then there's stress and mental health related to family struggles, shortage of mental health providers, access to care has been a struggle for many families. The waiting lists can be long. Disengagement, you know, loss of credit and feeling frustrated and not knowing how to catch up. Increase in school anxiety and school aversion and not feeling like they belong in the school. And you'll see that these elements on the left here, it wasn't done purposefully, but these go over across all of our families and students across the state. So we're seeing high levels of chronic absence in districts that we had not seen it before. And so everyone's sort of struggling with chronic absence. Even our non-high need families have seen an increase in chronic absence and attendance due to the illness and stress and mental health issues and other issues. And of course, the economic issues, access to housing, cost of utilities, student transiency, and lack of stable housing. There's been a lot of coverage. For instance, New London has seen a real spike in homeless youth through McKinney-Vento, basic needs not being met, not having the strength to go to school, and apathy, you know, high numbers of absences among staff. You know that we have a lot of shortage in staff right now. It's a national dilemma, but it also impacts student attendance. And then vacations, or as I like to say, family travel needs, because even though families are leaving for a long extended period of time, it may not be a vacation as we know it. It may just be the family needs to be where their family is in another country. And then transportation issues. So this is what we're learning as far as the reasons behind the chronic absence. If you have other reasons that you'd like to share, I encourage you to put them in the chat, because this is something that we take back to our leadership and share with them so that decisions can be made as far as where resources go. Next slide, please. This slide I'm not going to go over because of time, but I do want to share some promising practices that we discussed at that same LEAP coordinators meeting around intentional adult relationships, engaging families in trusting relationships through LEAP or through parent-teacher home visits, leveraging the school-based health clinics and school nurses. Now, a lot of families have more than 9 absences at this time, and so they may be required to have a doctor's note for their absences, even if they are sick or have a positive COVID test at home. And so I wanted to make sure folks are clear that the school nurse can serve as that medical provider, that the family can call the school nurse and have a conversation and talk about what are the symptoms that the student's presenting, because asking families to get a doctor's note can be a real hardship for them. And so we want to be realistic on the expectations we're putting to families as far as documentation of illness. So student attendance plans, using your social emotional learning assessments, your DESA tool. What are the results of your DESA tool telling you about SEL and where are the growth areas for your students that may have impact on their decisions about coming to school, especially when they're older. Collaborating with community partners and opening welcome centers for multilingual families. So those are some of the promising practices that we discussed at our meeting. Next slide, please. So I wanted to let folks know that, and I can't see my notes here, let me see, because I have to know what this, the Connecticut, the Center for Connecticut Education Resource Collaboration, affectionately known CCERC, is releasing an evaluation. Well, they're releasing an announcement of this formation of this formal evaluation partnership between SDE and the state and higher ed to evaluate and research some of these programs that we're funding with ARPA funds to see the impact. And so they're having a a webinar today to talk about one of their first evaluations on the learner engagement attendance program. And so the findings for that that research on we call LEAP will be covered today at 2 on this webinar with the National Student Engagement Attendance Center called Chronic Absenteeism, Troubling Trends and Promising Practices. Connecticut will be presenting with Ohio and Louisiana around what we're seeing around attendance data and what the trends are nationally. And then tomorrow, there'll be a State Board of Education presentation on the LEAP evaluation. And so I know a lot of LEAP districts are here. So I wanted to make you aware of that, and that will be live streamed on the CSDE YouTube page. And we're going to have 2 of our superstar home visitors presenting to our state board. We're going to have a home visitor from Stanford and a home visitor from Torrington. And then on January 19th, the official release of the report with the press event, more details to come about that. But I will have information for the LEAP coordinators because they participated. Thank you very much in this evaluation, the focus groups and sharing of data and SACIDs and all of that in order to do this evaluation. But we have a meeting on January 18th, the LEAP coordinators, and we'll review what's going to be released in that report then. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly or to put them in the chat. I haven't been monitoring the chat. Next slide, please. My colleague, Judy Carson, and her friends at CREC manage the Friday Cafe, and there's an upcoming Friday Cafe that looks really interesting. It's this week. What should family-facing professionals know and be able to do? Introducing the new family engagement core competencies. And so they will have, it's virtual this time. They're going to have 2 guest speakers, Ann Henderson and Margaret Caspi from Senior Research Consultants to come and talk about this new study, which looks fascinating. I call attention to it for the LEAP providers, for their home visitors. And I think that's my last slide. So if you have any questions for me, let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kari, so much. So we're going to turn it over now to our presenters for today. And it's Danielle, David, Kendra, and Stephanie. And if you need sharing access, just let us know. But Stephanie already gave it a test run. Perfect. So I'll turn it right over to you guys.
Thanks a lot, Christine. My name is Dave Alexandro. As Christine mentioned, today I'm going to be presenting with Stephanie, and we're also joined by Danielle and Kendra from the Performance Office. So both Danielle and Kendra are available to answer questions, you know, and they'll be monitoring the chat as well. But thanks for the time today, and we're going to focus on attendance today, but we did want to also provide a broader overview of EdSite, both public and secure. So kind of what we're going to cover today, as I mentioned, we'll give an overview of EdSite. I'll have some slides, but also Stephanie is going to do a live demo of EdSite, what many refer to as EdSite Public, which is our non-secure portal for the public that has district, state, and school level data. We'll look at chronic absenteeism. That report will also look at the supporting student participation page, which Kari had a screenshot of earlier during her slides. And then also we'll talk about EdSite Secure, and in particular 2 reports that have a wealth of student level attendance data. And we'll leave time at the end if you have any questions. And as I mentioned, please feel free to leave questions in the chat throughout the talk, and we'll try to get to them as we see them. You know, if we can kind of jump in and answer any questions as the presentation moves along. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the difference between the EdSite portals. So you know, many of you are probably familiar with EdSite, which the left-hand side of this slide, you know, many refer to it as EdSite Public. And as I mentioned, that's accessible to all. And it has detailed information about schools and districts and often we also provide state level data. But there is some suppression when we get to small sample or small n sizes to protect student anonymity. So we do have key performance measures there. All of the next gen accountability data are in EdSite and recently updated. And a variety of reports. We have updated the site within the last year. So if you haven't been on EdSite and really explored, we've added a lot of visualizations and really trying to take the feedback that we get from users, and also we have traffic data as to which reports get visited most frequently. So we're really trying to upgrade those reports and make sure that we're giving our users the full range of data that they're looking for. And I provided a link at the bottom there for EdSite Public. And then on the right side of the slide is EdSite Secure. So as the name suggests, only designated school and district users can access the EdSite Secure portal through a secure login. So here we have unsuppressed longitudinal student level data. So we do have some school and district level reports in there, but primarily the way to think of EdSite Secure is when you really want to dive in and see student level data, EdSite Secure is where you'd go for that. So you have detailed unsuppressed information, schools and districts, a variety of reports, and then two of the reports that I mentioned, the early indication tool or EIT and the student summary, that's where you can really see student level attendance data that I think would be useful to this group. So speaking specifically about attendance, I wanted to make sure I provided a slide on what attendance data is available in each of the portals. So as I mentioned, EdSite, we have state, district, and school level data. We also have breakouts by student groups. So if you wanted to see for high needs students, if you wanted to see for English learners, if you wanted to see it broken out by race, ethnicity, all of those different student groupings are available in EdSite. And as it relates to attendance specifically, we have the chronic absenteeism report, which has end of year counts and percentages. And that data you can access from 2012 school year, 2011, 2012 school year up through the present. And since it is end of year data, the most recent year would be last school year. And then we also have the supporting student participation. And that was during COVID, an initiative that Connecticut really was one of the first states in the country that made an effort to move away from this end of year attendance look and start collecting and reporting on and analyzing monthly data. So that supporting student participation page allows you, and this is on EdSite Public, so this is available to everyone. It allows you to look at year-to-date chronic absenteeism percentages, attendance rates, and as I mentioned at the top of this slide, that's at the school level, district level, it's at the state level, and it has all of the student groups that I alluded to earlier. Since this is a newer collection, we provide comparisons from the 2019-20 school year, and then we have the subsequent years in which we had the monthly attendance collection. It's always year-to-date information that we're providing. So the December collection just closed. I mentioned that Kendra is on the call. Kendra is the data steward for all of the attendance and PSIS information. So once we receive all of the December attendance files, what we'll do is just do a final confirmation on that collection. We'll run all of the analysis reports, and that should be up within the next week or so. So currently, it's through the end of November as the December data are finally being collected from districts. And we have not only data files, but we do have column charts and maps. So we do have some visualizations available in the supporting student participation page. As we move over to EdSite Secure, as I mentioned, this is student level data. So the EIT or early indication tool, that provides a 2-year look at student attendance, and that's the end of year attendance rate. So it's not the monthly attendance that's available in EdSite. This is the end of year attendance, and it is color coded to highlight those students who are chronically absent or moderately chronically absent. to really highlight those attendance issues over the last 2 years at the student level. And then also the student summary, which we'll talk about and Stephanie will provide details on, that provides the attendance data that I've been talking about, but it also provides district and school enrollments. So you can really see the student's history for the full time that they've been enrolled in Connecticut public schools, not only in your school or district, but anywhere throughout Connecticut. So for those students that have moved quite a bit, the student summary tool is really valuable for that. As it relates to attendance, we have all of the students K through 12 attendance while they've been enrolled in Connecticut public schools. Not only the attendance percentage, but we also have days of attendance, which is the number of days they were in attendance at the school, and days of membership, the number of days that they were enrolled in that school in that particular school year. And we do have not only the data tables, but we also have column charts so that you can see the trend for that particular student as they've moved along in Connecticut public schools. So what I'm going to do right now is just kind of give you a quick snapshot or show you a quick snapshot of the different reports and the different data sets that are available. But then I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, and she's going to go into the live site in EdSite Public and show you specifically. I provided some links on the bottom of the slides that will be shared with you at the end of this presentation. So you'll all have the PDF of today's slides. But I wanted to provide a slide, just a snapshot. So this chronic absenteeism report, as I mentioned, this is an end of year report. So I put annual there, and it is available in EdSite Public. And you can see there are a number of filters there. You can look at the trend data. For this particular screenshot, I just looked at the state data from 2017-18 school year through the end of last year, so that you can kind of see how the chronic absenteeism trend has moved over the years, over the last 5 years specifically. And as the people on this call know, the chronic absenteeism has been trending up, and Kari and all of the people that have been working on the attendance piece specifically are really doing a great job of working with districts and working with students to help reverse this trend. The next slide is just a snapshot of that supporting student participation page. So I don't expect you to be able to read all of the words on this particular screenshot, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what's there. So, it starts off with the monthly attendance report, where we used to have actual PDF documents where we gave a narrative kind of describing what was happening during that first year of school during COVID, where students were remote and some were in person, and we were providing kind of a monthly narrative as to what we were seeing. And then what we did was we moved away from that, and now we provide Excel files. So that's the current data file section. I mentioned Stephanie will get into this, so you'll be able to see it a lot more clearly. And then below the data files, below those PDFs I mentioned, that's where you can see some visuals that get into attendance rates, get into chronic absenteeism rates, and also highlights some of the piece that Kari kind of worked into her presentation earlier, was about the LEAP districts specifically. So we do have some visuals specific to the LEAP districts on the student supporting student participation page. So this is just kind of a zoom in on those pieces I just mentioned. So here's the attendance rate plot, and you can see that we are trying to show different student groups to really kind of take a deeper dive into the data, not just look at attendance rates statewide, but to see whether or not we are noticing trends within student groups, and more specifically problematic trends within student groups that we can possibly provide interventions to help these student groups become more engaged and come to school more frequently. So that's the attendance rates chart. And then the next slide is the chronic absenteeism. So the 2019-20 school year, which is the gray bar, and then you move to 2020-21, and then the 21-22 year, all of those are the end of year values. But that rightmost column, which is the current school year, 22-23, that's through the end of November, and that's noted in the title at the top of the particular graph you'll be looking at. It'll say YTD for year to date as of November 2022. So this is always a comparison of year to date compared with year end of previous years. So, and when Stephanie goes into the live report, you'll see you can hover over any of these bars and there will be some text that pops up, and the screenshot here shows that as well. There's also a map that allows you to, we've color coded the map to show the disparity in attendance rates between students with high needs and students who are not identified as having high needs. So, so the darker the green, the larger disparity in attendance rates. And that's an interactive map as well. So you can hover over the different little schoolhouse icons, and that will show you which district you're looking at. You can click on it and drill into the data as well. Go to the next slide, Stephanie, please.
I think that's me, Dave.
Yeah. So I'll turn it over to Stephanie now. And yeah, thanks, Stephanie.
All right, thank you, Dave. So as Dave said, I'm going to do a quick live demo of EdSite Public, just so you can see some of the images that he presented in the earlier slides kind of in real time. Hopefully that will help some of you when you try to go back in and remember where you're supposed to click or where things live on our site. So I'll switch over to my browser. So as Dave said, EdSite Public is our public-facing portal. So there are a couple of ways to get to EdSite. Some of you may be most familiar with our regular department homepage. So that's that portal.ct.gov/SDE. When you go to the top of that page, this is what you'll see with that gray box. So you can just, and I'm just gonna make sure you can't, nothing is in your way here. Okay, I'm gonna scroll down and then you'll see the EdSite link is right here. So you can just click on that and that'll bring you to our homepage. As Dave mentioned back in May, so about 8 months ago now, we did redesign this EdSite Public homepage, so it looks slightly different. We wanted to make it more modern, more accessible, a little easier to navigate was our hope. And so a lot of the functionality is the same. So you'll see the same menu options on the top that you were familiar with. If you haven't been in here for a while, it looks slightly different, but you'll be able to find your way around. We've got the overview, students, and all of those. And then if you scroll down in the body of the page, we have some quick high-level metrics for the state. And then we also have quick links to some of our new visual dashboards and some of our more frequently visited pages, FAFSA, pandemic recovery, and then supporting participation, which is the page Dave was just reviewing. We also have some summary report links on the right, which we'll look at. And I know Christine was talking about Next Gen. So we also have a new and updated section, and that those Next Gen links are here. And then we also have just a static link that's always here for Next Gen. So if you're to click on supporting participation, you'll go to this web page that Dave was just showing you the screenshots from. Here you can look a little more closely at some of that narrative text that was provided that helps in interpreting the page. And then as Dave said, this monthly attendance report with a PDF from 2021, all of those PDF reports are right here. You can just expand and you can click on any of these to view those historic PDF reports. And then we have the current data files, and then those 21-22 year-end data files as well. And again, this is just the expand collapse, so don't be thrown. You have to just click to see those links. These are the charts he was discussing, and the hovers, you can just hover over those to see, you know, the actual value if this small data tip on top is not large enough for you. And then this map as well. Dave was discussing the hovers here, so you can see a lot of additional information you can see when you hover. You can also search for a district or program here using the search box. You can zoom in and out. So this is just showing you that interaction that you may not fully have understood from the screenshots. And then this is that LEAP chart Dave was mentioning as well. There's a link below that chart that you can click on to get some additional information about that learner engagement and attendance program. And then we have even more archives. All the section below is the school learning model data from 2021, if that's of interest to you, with some of those charts. But that is just that historical data. So we've archived that at the bottom. So if you go back to the home page, we also wanted to just show you this Connecticut report card report. You'll see a visual of the chronic absenteeism metric in this chart. It provides in this report, and it provides trend data for the state, the district, or the school. Some of you may be familiar with this report, but just in case you're not, we wanted to take a second to showcase that. So if you click on Connecticut report cards, you'll go to a selector page, which allows you to say whether you want to view the state report card or a district or school report card. And you may not know the school, the district in which the school you're interested in is actually associated. So you can use the search, the school and district search at the bottom as well, and you just type into there. So if you wanted to see the state report card, this is what it would look like. From the district drop down, you'll see it says State of Connecticut. And then at the top, you'll see some high level metrics. And then you'll see some buckets, we call them: students, educators, instruction resources, and performance. Chronic absenteeism data are under students. So you just click that to expand and scroll down, and you'll see this chart, which provides the trend data. And typically in EdSite Public, when we say trend, we mean the most recent 5 years. So you'll see the most recent 5 years of data for the state. And we have some icons here. So we have an info icon if you need a reminder. I'm sure most of you don't, but if you're working with any parent groups or any other groups, you can click right on that and it will tell you what the definition of chronic absence is right in that hover. And then this little gauge icon actually tells you the indicator in our accountability system that chronic absenteeism is. So it tells you it's accountability indicator number 4, and it tells you what the ultimate target is, less than or equal to 5%. You can click actually right on this to get into that EdSite Public chronic absenteeism report Dave was showing you, or you can click anywhere on the graph, and that will get you there as well. I did want to show you, though, what a district report card would look like. So I just selected Ansonia, same idea, the top level metrics, and you click on students. But now this time, you're actually provided with a comparison between the district and the state. You'll notice it's only 4 years of trend. That's just because of the space that we have on this page. But now you have the district in the dark blue and the state in the orange so that you can compare the trend there. And similarly, if you look at a school level report card, here I've selected Ansonia High School. I also want to remind everyone, when you're in these EdSite Public reports, you have to make your selections from the drop downs and then click submit, and that's what refreshes the body of the report. So when you're in the school level report card, you'll now see a 3-year trend, but you have the school in dark blue, the district in orange, and the state in gray. So you can see those comparisons between school, district, and state. And if you go back and you want to just navigate directly, so this is the EdSite homepage again, and you want to navigate directly to the chronic absenteeism report, that's again under students and attendance. And when you click that, it'll bring you to this report. So the default for this report, I believe Dave's screenshot showed you trend, state of Connecticut, and high needs. The default is trend all districts. So if you scroll down, you'll notice all the districts are here and all students. If you want to just select one district, you'd come here. We'll just stay with Ansonia. You'll notice nothing actually updated yet because I haven't submitted it. And if you want to look at a different student group, you can select that, press submit, and now you have those results there. So this is Ansonia. chronic absenteeism trend. And again, you'll notice that's those 5 years by race ethnicity. You can export those data by clicking the export CSV. And we also have additional information on this report in our related links section. So if you click this see related links, it jumps you to the bottom of the page. You have some truancy, a truancy Excel, an older presentation, and then some report notes. And the report notes are here, and they just provide you some terms and definitions, as well as additional important information and the source and update schedule and contact information. So with that, Dave, did you want me to review anything else? Oh, I just wanted to say one more thing, actually. We also have right on this homepage, if you scroll to the bottom, you can email the EdSite Help Desk by clicking here, and it'll bring up a link to email. And this is actually where we're going to move next, is to talking about EdSite Secure. And so there's actually a login right on the homepage, down at the bottom right, log into EdSite Secure. If you have that username and password, you can click right here to get to EdSite Secure. Dave, anything I missed?
No, that was great. Yeah, I think you covered everything.
All right, great.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Stephanie, would you mind just going back to the supporting student engagement page, participation page? Yes, here. I just want to point out where you find your own district's information, right? If you're like, I'm in Ansonia, where do I find my November data? I don't see it. It's over here in these spreadsheets. These links are to Excel spreadsheets that you can download. And I'll repeat, because I always do, it's very helpful to have someone who can manipulate Excel on your school or district attendance team, because you'll find all your data in those spreadsheets. You'll find daily attendance for schools and chronic absence rates for your district and for your student populations, and by grade level in the chronic absence rates one. So I just wanted to say you have to download those to get to your specific district or school's information. Thank you.
Dave, did you want to add anything about these current data files?
No, but I think Kari's point is well taken as far as, just kind of exploring those files in Excel. And if you're someone who's not that comfortable in Excel, these files are pretty straightforward. So, simply turning on a filter at the top of a column, and then so if you have two districts you want to compare, or if you want to just look at your district specifically and the school level file, you can see only your schools if you'd like. And we do provide columns that go back to the 2019-20 school year, so you can see the trend within the Excel file, just like you can see the trend in EdSite Public. But I think that's a really important point, just that the importance of going in each month, downloading the Excel files, and taking a deeper dive for your district, and even looking at other districts. If you know that other districts are similar to yours, wondering if how their attendance, maybe you could speak to someone in their district about why things are going well, or if you have some best practices that are working for you, you can share that if you see that their attendance rates are down. So I think that it also facilitates some collaboration across districts as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, so I will switch back over to the slide deck, and we'll start to talk about EdSite Secure. Did I miss any other questions in the chat? I put the chat down. Let me.
Nope, I've been monitoring a little bit and it looks like nothing came through. Just a reminder, we will share the slides with everybody.
Okay, so Dave already reviewed what is EdSite Secure. So here it is for you again. Again, it's just like the name says, it's the secure online data portal. And you do have to have a username and password to access those student level data. And you can manipulate data in many ways in EdSite Secure. And I know Dave already mentioned also there are reports in multiple different data domains, and we'll focus on EIT and student summary today. But we wanted to just tell you quickly, I know many of you on the call, and I know Jason's on the call from Bloomfield, and he's made some suggestions about additions recently to EdSite Secure in the area of attendance too. So I know I have those emails, so I'm hoping to get back to those, Jason. I haven't forgotten. forgotten. But we also, for those of you who don't have access yet, wanted to just review how do you gain access if you do not. I know many of you do. So here is that slide. My mouse doesn't want to go over to that page. Okay. So first you need to be designated by your superintendent as an individual who can have access to the system. Obviously, in the system, you have access to all of the student level data, either for the whole district or for a school, depending on the role you're assigned. So you have to be designated by the superintendent. And then your LEA security manager will create you an account if you don't have one already, or if you already have an existing account, they'll assign you the appropriate role. And then you'll need to wait about an hour to log in. And sometimes it is more than an hour. So we always say, try after the hour. That doesn't work. Don't do any resetting of your passwords. Don't do anything. Just wait probably another hour and give that a try again. If that's not working and your LEA security manager is unable to help you, please feel free to reach out to that EdSite help desk, or you can always reach out directly to me too. And when we give this slide deck for posting, both mine and Dave's emails are on the end. So if you'd like to know who your LEA security manager is, we provided a link here. I've also provided a screenshot of the report that you can use to find your LEA security manager. We used to have just a PDF report, but now we've made this an interactive report. So I'll actually switch back over and show you what that looks like and how to find it. And this LEA security manager is the person who, even once you've gotten your account and your password, if you are having trouble logging in or you need assistance, this is the person in the district who can help you. You typically don't need to reach out to anyone at the state, so your response time is going to be better if you can reach directly out to this person. So to get to that report, it's called the Find Contacts report. You actually go to Overview, and then under General Information, Find Contacts, and it will bring you to this report here. So you'll type in your district. I wonder if anyone from Ansonia is on the call. I'm not picking on you. We always use you as an example district. So now it might take a little while to load because I've been out of it, but you type in Ansonia, and once it loads down at the bottom of the screen, I'll switch back over. Down at the bottom of the screen, there is a section called District Data Contacts. You expand that and you select LEA Security Manager. And then your result will come up in this table, and you can actually double click to send an email, or you can export that information to Excel. Many districts have more than one LEA security manager, so the hope is you'll be able to contact someone and get a response quickly if you do need assistance there. And this is what it looks like in the actual site. You expand and you click LEA Security Manager. It lost my district, but I think you get the idea there. Oftentimes when I'm on VPN and I'm on video, things are quite slow for me. So I think that's basically the overview of EdSite Secure, how you gain access, what report to use. And now we're going to dive into the two reports we'd like to talk about, EIT and Student Summary. And look at the time, Dave.
Yes. Yeah. So as Stephanie mentioned, there are a number of you on the call that we have been in presentations with before, and we have visited before. So for many of you, this will be a review. So we're not going to maybe go into the same level of detail that we have in the past, but we did want to provide these slides so that if people are not as familiar with the early indication tool or the student summary, they would be able to go back to the slideshow after our presentation. So as far as the EIT, I started back with the state in 2017, and Chuck Marty and I, we were tasked with developing Connecticut's early warning system, or in our case, we're calling it the early indication tool, or EIT. So it is developed in-house, and it's a data analytics and visualization tool for district and school personnel. It is insecure, so you do have to have EdSite secure access, and it provides a historical view of a student's data. So it has student level data, and it has an assessment of the level of support that individual students may need to reach academic milestone. So we're using statistical methods to differentiate support levels based on an estimation of the likelihood that students will achieve the outcome of interest. So we're looking at past trends in student data. We're using all of the data elements that are available to us, and we're trying to do our best in highlighting those students who may benefit from additional support. So the way that we generally think of it, the approach that we take is what we call the mile marker approach. So we're breaking the student's career in grades 1 through 12 into 4 mile markers. So we're not trying to predict, for example, how likely it is for a second grader to graduate high school. What we're doing is we're looking at most 3 years ahead. So if you look at mile marker 1, you see that that's specifically looking at 3rd grade Smarter Balanced ELA proficiency, a very important milestone in a student's early school career. As students move into grades 4, 5, and 6, in the EIT, we're looking at the student's likelihood of reaching both math and ELA proficiency on the Smarter Balanced exam. Finally, or not finally, but next is mile marker 3. Now we're moving towards that middle school block of students, and we're looking at, and we're also trying to tie in with next gen accountability. We don't want to look at outcomes that are not important in Connecticut. So for mile marker 3, we're looking at the on track indicator. So whether or not that student will be on track by the end of 9th grade to graduate high school in 4 years. And then finally, college and career readiness is our last mile marker. So you can see that each of the mile markers does kind of keep us within this 3-year block, and it allows us to not project too far into the future the outcome of interest, and really allow educators to focus on the short-term window, which those short-term milestones have shown very strong correlations with the later milestones as well. So by helping that student early, you're also helping them reach those later milestones. So I mentioned the support levels. So we're just using 3 support levels: low, medium, and high. So when you're viewing the EIT, you'll see that each student has a support level associated with their record. So I mentioned that we use statistical methods. We run machine learning models. What we're doing is we're using patterns in the data to identify students who may struggle to reach that next milestone. So statewide, the students who have the lowest likelihood of meeting the academic milestone, that 25% of students in each grade, they're assigned to the high support level that you see noted on the right. As you move to the middle of the slide, you'll see the next 35% of students fall into the medium support level. Finally, the students who have the highest probability, the 40% of students that have the highest likelihood of reaching the milestone, they're in the low support group. And what we like to always point out is that these probabilities are based on past data. So we have hundreds of thousands of student records in our data warehouse. We work to discover patterns that have resulted in different performance over the years, but we also want to point out that these support levels are not deterministic. So we're not saying that the student will meet the outcome or will fail to meet the outcome. All we're saying is that based on what we've seen in the past, students who've had similar test scores, similar attendance, mobility, behavior, all of the variables that go into these models, we're suggesting that students in the medium and high support levels will benefit from a closer look by districts and schools. So now I just want to show you some screenshots, a quick look at the early indication tool in Secure. So this is the EdSite Secure homepage, and on the left-hand panel, the students panel, you can see there's a link to the early indication tool. So once you're inside the EIT, you will have a range of charts and data tables available to you. So Stephanie, if you could just go to the next slide. So this is what the chart tab will look like, and you can see that it does provide a visual representation, what percentage of your students are in low support, medium support, high support. So it won't necessarily follow that state breakdown that I showed, but now that you know what the state breakdown is, you can compare whether or not your district or school has a higher proportion of students in low, medium, or high support. So that's the chart tab, and there are filters available. And then the data tab, I think, will be most useful for all of you. I mentioned that this is a student level record. So you have the data tabs are highlighted at the top, those rectangles that are colored in green. And then the next label that you see there, that blue box it says see filter selections here. So any filters that you've selected, there will be some help text that allows you to see the current level of filter that's being applied. You can search by SACID, you can search by name, and also you can use different groupings of attendance for the lower grades, K inventory scores, how many times a student has moved, those type of things. And in the data table on the bottom, you can see that there are color codings based on the different values for that student's record. So each row represents one student in the early indication tool. And as we've noted there, you can double click a student and that will take you to the student summary, which is a report that Stephanie's going to go into detail on. I wanted to just highlight, as it relates to attendance, I mentioned quickly that we do have filters. So I've highlighted on this slide where those filters are that will allow you to see those student records that perhaps fall within certain attendance buckets. So if you wanted to look at students who attended school less than 75% of the time, or any of the groupings, and you can select, that's a multi-select, so you can choose as many of those options as you would like. As all of the EdSite Secure reports allow, when you are in a data table and you're looking, in this case, we're looking at the EIT, you can always right-click anywhere in that list table, and you'll see that there's an export data option. Also, the vertical ellipsis, the 3 dots, or the snowman icon, you can see that will also provide a shortcut option to export your data. So I just wanted to highlight that. It is available in the EIT. It's also available for any of the EdSite Secure reports that provide list tables like this. Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Stephanie, and as I mentioned, she's going to talk about the student summary.
Thanks, Dave. Kari, I don't know how much time you need at the end, so I might kind of just go quickly over some of these slides.
Okay, yeah, we just need a minute or two just to show them the future meetings.
Okay, great. So I think Dave already did a great job kind of giving an overview of the student summary. It's that single student view where you can see all the historical data in terms of enrollment and attendance and even assessment data and even discipline data now. So this is kind of just the slide with a definition that you can read over, but that's really what it is, longitudinal student level report across all these domains. And another important thing to note for those of you who may not have experience with the student summary, and Dave already mentioned this as well, but you can see all of the available data for any student registered to your district or the school, if you have school level access, in PSIS registration. And that's in real time. So it's kind of like an electronic transfer of records, if you will. The next day, you'll see that all that historical student data from any district in which the student was enrolled in Connecticut that the department has data for. And we say the system updates daily at 6. Sometimes the background processes take a little longer, so it might be at 7, but you will see those student data for any student registered to PSIS to your district the next day. The one question we sometimes get is people will say we've registered a student, I'm not seeing the data. Sometimes there's a disconnect between your local systems and PSIS registration. The student has to be registered to your district in PSIS registration for the data to be available to you. This is just another screenshot showing you the two ways that you can get to the student summary. Dave already showed you EIT, and you could also just click student summary. This is what will happen if you click student summary. And again, I'm not going to go into everything that's here, but if you want to complete the take-home message for this slide is if you want a complete listing of all of your students that are currently registered to your district in PSIS, we want you to use this All Students tab. These grade tabs are based on EIT. The student had to be enrolled at the last time EIT was updated for them to appear in one of these. Also, we don't have pre-K or K students in these grade tabs. So our recommendation is to use this All Students tab. Then you can search that tab and you'll get your student that you're looking for. And then you can just double click there and go to the student summary. This is just another slide about accessing through EIT. Just locate your student and double click on a student record. And then the next slide just shows you there are different versions of the student summary. The first 4 on this slide, model 1, 2, 3, and 4, contain a visual dashboard. That dashboard is based on EIT data. There are, obviously in grades 1 through 3, we don't have this assessment history in purple you see here. But there are differences, slight differences between the versions, but mostly the important note is that models 1, 2, 3, and 4 have that visual dashboard. And for students who weren't enrolled at the time of last EIT update, they won't have one of these model 1 through 4, but they will have a history only. So the difference with this is you're seeing all the history, you just don't have that visual dashboard. We just wanted to kind of draw your attention to that. When you access the student summary from that All Students tab, you're going to go to the history only version, but it's giving you all that information, just not that initial dashboard. So here are examples of what the dashboards look like. This is that model 1, grade 1 through 3 dashboard. You see some tabs at the top. I'm just trying to keep an eye on time. Your EIT support level. Dave, was that something? Did you have something? No. You have the current demographic information. You have that reminder of the milestone that Dave talked about on that road slide, that milestone marker slide, as well as the criteria for success. You have some discipline and mobility metrics, and that's across the lifetime of the student. So that's not just 1 year back or 2 years back, that's all of it. So you have total out of school suspensions, total in school suspensions, and those mobility metrics, which are school moves and district moves. And then this is the color-coded gauges. So here for model 1, you're only seeing kindergarten inventory and attendance, but we do call out those attendance metrics on that dashboard. So you can see this gauge and you can see the actual percentage, that's your attendance rate, and then we have it color-coded with the gauge. So I'm going to go really quickly over 2. You'll just see that we've added Smarter Balanced ELA and Math. 3. And this is at grades 8 through 9. And then 4. 4, I know Dave oftentimes does this slide, so I just want to make sure that we talk about, we have Smarter Balanced PSAT and SAT assessments here for this model 4 grades 10 through 12. We've also added core courses failed. So right here, you're going to see in grades 8 through 11 for this student, they haven't failed any core courses. If they did, you would see a listing, like it would say science or English or math, and you could tell in which grades the student got a failing grade in those courses, which is also quite helpful information.
Stephanie,
Yeah.
there's a question in the chat regarding if we'll be adding truancy to the data that's analyzed in the tool, but now that we're collecting it.
Yeah, now that we're collecting it, right? So we changed the source for the PPR to that student level truancy data. So I would say we would have to integrate it into the warehouse, but it's certainly possible. Yeah, and I assume that would be helpful based on the comment. So I'll put that out to the group. Thank you for that. And then those were the dashboard tabs. These are the history tabs. This is that enrollment history tab where Dave described the enrollment information with all the associated demographic variables for all the historical collections that we have for that student. And then this is that attendance tab where Dave mentioned the charts, the color-coded charts, as well as all the historical attendance data, including the grade in which the student was enrolled, the school, the district, the days of attendance, membership, and then the attendance and absence rate. We also have an assessment tab and a lost links tab. And I want to make sure we end with a minute for Kari. And then this page just tells you how to select a different student. It talks about an interactive breadcrumb, printing, and that's it. And here's our contact information. And again, we'll send these slides right over. So sorry that was so quick, but I think I gave you a couple minutes, Kari.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to turn it over to Christine, but thank you, Dave and Stephanie and the performance team. This was fantastic.
Of course.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for having us.
No, thank you
job.
guys. This was really great.
Excellent.
If there's any
Very
questions, you can
well
put them in
done.
the chat
Very well
if you have
done.
any questions.
Absolutely. And if anything comes to mind, the emails were there, but we'll also provide our emails at the end. And we'll try to get this information out to you as soon as possible. So just to give you kind of a heads up on our upcoming Talk Tuesdays. So our next one is going to be January 24th. We are hoping to do final confirmations to have DCF and Stanford Youth come back to join us again and have some Q&A and give a little more time, because we know we needed more time when we had them the last go around. So we're targeting January 24th for that. And coming in February 7th and the 21st, we're still kind of working on those pieces and confirmations for those pieces, but we're also hoping to bring LEAP in as well to have a conversation about LEAP programming and what that looks like and some great successes that they've had in this state. So those are on the horizon, and we'll provide emails once the confirmations are set. And our information. So we have Kari's email, myself and Steve are right here, just in case you need to touch base with us on anything. When it comes to registration, and feel free, you could include me in on it. But Lauren Johns, our project specialist for Talk Tuesdays, works a lot with the logistics around registration. So if you have any issues with that or concerns, that email as well. And again, you could CC myself in that. Other than that, though, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Stephanie and David. This was fantastic.
Really good. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, CSTE. It was great.
No problem.
Thank
And
you,
Jason,
sir.
Jason
And
had a
just, you know,
question.
don't forget to email Christine and I and Kari for any ideas or types of sessions that you want to continue to